Okay, so what we did again was leave the 0 alone, do everything on the left side until it equals 0. So do the same thing for question B. If you have questions about question B, a lot of people had questions because of the squared, I can help you. On the back, the rules are different now. It says find all the solutions. Find all the solutions means solve for x. And it has 2 sine x plus 1 equals 0. So I'm going to solve for x. That means let's try to get x by itself. What do we do to get x by itself? Subtract 1. Divide by 2. Now we need to get x by itself. So I would inverse it, or I could just think to myself, I'm trying to find what angle that the sine of that angle equals -1/2. So this is the same exact thing that you're doing right here that I gave you that whole review for. That's why I gave you that review, because that's eventually what you're going to be doing for all these questions. It's just the solving part. You have to kind of review things from Algebra 2 that maybe you've forgotten, however we have reviewed recently. So where is sine negative? These two quadrants. Where is sine 1/2? Pi over 6 is 30 degrees, pi over 6 is. So I need a pi over 6 that is in the third quadrant and a pi over 6 that is in the fourth quadrant. I get 2 answers. And you look at the next example. We're solving, so we have to get x by itself. First thing, add 3. Divide by 4. Right now, x is not by itself. But I can't just start thinking about where is cosine 3/4, because there's something else there besides cosine. What else is there? The squared. So I'm going to undo the squared. Remember, cosine squared x is the same thing as like cosine x multiplied by cosine x. The x's are the same. It's just the cosines that get multiplied together. So how do I undo a squared? What's the inverse of a squared? Square root. So you are going to square root, but there's this rule that people forget. I don't know why we keep forgetting, but we forget. When you put in the square root when you're solving, you have to include a plus minus. So I'm getting that cosine x is equal to plus minus, and then anytime you square root a fraction, you can square root the top and the bottom separately. So I'm going to get square root of 3 over 2. And this whole page is without a calculator, so that's got to be one of those special right triangle values. So I got to make a picture, and I need to know where cosine is either positive or negative. All 4 quadrants. So how many answers will I get? I'm going to get 4 answers when I find them. And you guys can find those. And then this third example, I had a lot of questions about this as well. You're trying to solve for x. So a lot of people saw this and just didn't quite know what to do. I saw a lot of people distributing, and that's not actually the thing I want to do. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make it a little bit easier looking problem. I'm going to say that u is going to represent secant x. So if I substitute u in, every time I see secant x, would you know how to solve this one for u? You know how to do it, Terry? Does anybody else know how to do it besides Terry, or is he the only one? Maybe, Kia? So it is factored already. This is factored form. So what do we do to solve after something's factored? Set each factor equals 0. So what I would do is I would say u equals 0 and u minus 1 equals 0. And so u equals 1. But it isn't u. What is that? Secant x. So I would have secant x equals 0, and I would have secant x equals 1. So what I'm doing now is I have two different questions I'm answering. And I'll put them all in the same fancy bracket in order when I find all my answers. Okay, so your goal is to answer all of these notes, and then on Monday we will just review any questions you have. I'm not going to reteach everything again, and then you'll work on a worksheet in class where you could ask me questions as well. Okay, so your next 6 minutes of class, you can work on finishing your notes. And then if you didn't finish that chapter 4 review, that is being collected.